Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back to episode 35 of the Snarp Fangle Podcast. I am your host, Jake Metzger, your neighborly Facebook and Marketplace PC parts hunter, along with my co-host, the man, the myth, the guitar, and the beard, ladies and gentlemen, David Reed. David, how are you doing?
Excellent.
Good to hear. And our guest this week is someone who is constantly, nonstop singing This Is Halloween in this wonderful, spooky year, and she's singing it 24/7. Ladies and gentlemen, the spooktacular Stephanie Smith.
Hello.
Stephanie, how you doing?
It's a great day.
It is a great day. Amen. That's right. We got to speak it out, you know. So, but anyway, I was thinking to myself, I said, who else do I want on the podcast? And I've messaged like a bunch of people, and a lot of them never got back, but you did. And I want to say thank you for taking your time to come here and talk about what we're going to talk about today. And Stephanie, first off, how are you doing?
It is a great day.
It is a great day. Okay.
I promise.
So with this great day, I kind of want to direct it over to you. And we're going to, what are we talking about today, Stephanie?
So today we're going to talk about mental illness and mental health. And the reason why this is on my heart so much is October is Suicide Prevention Month. And also because I feel like there's such a struggle out there for adults and children and not enough resources. And it's a really important topic and kind of stump that stigma. So I am really grateful that we get to do this today.
Yeah. I mean, as open as you guys want to be, just whatever you're comfortable with, honestly. And we'll talk about just all the stuff as we go through it. So
For sure.
Yeah. Do you have something for us first and then go for there? Or?
Yeah. So I'm just going to share a couple statistics to start us off.
Yeah.
So this, I think this is from the National Awareness of Mental Illness. And that's a nonprofit. It's an amazing organization. 1 out of every 5 adults experience a mental illness. 18% live with anxiety disorders. 7% live with major depression. 1 out of every 5 youth ages 13 through 18 live with a mental health condition. 37% of students with a mental health condition age 14 plus drop out of school. And then 70% of youth in state and local juvenile justice systems have a mental illness.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm on the website, National Institute of Mental Health, the NIH. Yeah. Yeah, they have a bunch of stuff on here listed that looks quite familiar to me, actually. And before we get started, if you guys don't mind, I think I'm going to go first. And I guess we'll kind of, I don't know what you guys want to do, but for me, I was going to bring up my journey with mental health and what I have and stuff like that. But before we even dive in, I do want to read this verse from Zephaniah. So it says, "The Lord your God is with you, the mighty warrior who saves. He will take great delight in you. In his love, he will no longer rebuke you." And then I'm going to read this little excerpt, this count on Instagram. They kind of do, it's not really Christian, but they have like little Ghibli art background stuff and a Bible verse every day. So it's just a little cute, kind of nice thing to wake up in the morning to. But Joy Christ Heaven is the account if you're curious. But they said on their post this morning, Zephaniah 3:17 reminds us of God's unconditional love and delight in us. Despite our mistakes and shortcomings, God chooses to rejoice over us with singing. This verse encourages us to understand that our worth and value come not from our achievements or performance, but from God's unwavering love. We often strive for perfection, trying to earn God's approval, but this verse flips that mindset. God already delights in us, not because of what we do, but because of who we are as beloved children. This verse invites us to rest in God's presence, basking in his love and delight. When we feel overwhelmed, anxious, or inadequate, we can recall Zephaniah 3:17 and remember that God is with us, rejoicing over us. Let's learn to quiet our self-criticism and instead listen to God's gentle singing. As we rest in his love, you'll find freedom from self-doubt and fear. We'll discover that identity is rooted in God's affection, not our accomplishments. May this verse inspire you to deepen your relationship with God, trusting in his unwavering love and delight in you. And I think that's so true because I know in terms of just what from my I've observed in life and what I've experienced, it seems that worship and kind of getting a little deeper with the Lord, it's so hard to find quiet times, even when it is quiet. It's so hard to find quiet times, at least for me. And I've realized worship and praising kind of clears out some stuff, kind of the busyness as we described on this podcast before. And it really is important to kind of do that every once in a while, to even just put it on a worship song and just focusing on the singing, on praising him, uplifting him, that kind of thing. Because as we know in the Bible, it says, I think it says, I don't know the verse, David, but it says somewhere that the demons can't stand the devil can't stand like the worship of the Lord or something like that. You're giving me a weird face. I don't know if that's the case.
I don't know what you're referring to.
Yeah, I there's something in there somewhere. But it says like when you worship the Lord, the demons can't stand the sound of it.
I have never read such a verse.
I mean, maybe I'm totally wrong.
That doesn't discount the importance of praise and worship. The Bible does say that God inhabits the praises of his people. And in Psalms, it also says, so it's a reference to the tabernacle. I believe it's Psalm 100, where 107, I think, is the verse.
I think you're right.
So chapter 100, verse 7, I think, where it's referring to the tabernacle, and it says, enter his gates with thanksgiving, enter his courts with praise. And so now our tabernacle...
You're wrong, David. There's no 7 verses in Psalms 100. There's only 5.
Oh, which one was it?
Oh my goodness.
4.
Oh, 104. That's
3
what
and
it was.
4, yeah. Oh yeah, 4. 4 and 5.
Yeah, so we no longer have a physical tabernacle where the Lord's presence resides. The Lord's presence resides in us.
Yeah.
And so we can take that principle and apply it to our worship. And we can discover that praise and thanksgiving are the keys by which we enter into the presence of the Lord. And elsewhere in the word, it says, in his presence is fullness of joy.
Amen. That's right.
So
yeah. And so with that, I kind of want to just dive into my personal journey with just mental health and stuff like that. I've always been curious about what mental health actually means, but going to that website kind of helps me out and kind of distinguishes what is what and what falls under that category. I know over the years, things like autism, for example, has had different like names and stuff. Like back when I was little, it was called Asperger's.
Yeah.
And so that's what I am most so familiar with. So with that, I guess I'll tell my story. So when I was, let's see, get ready. And if I cry, I apologize. Here we go.
If you cry, I cry.
When I was 18 months old, I was like a normal baby, I guess. I don't remember what I was before that.
I was a normal baby.
But so I remember I was born. That's what my parents was telling, I was born apparently. And then 18 months later, my mom and dad took me in to get some shots. And they said, all right, got to get some baby shots, get it done. And they actually wanted me to have those like a year after I was born, but they pushed it back. My mom and dad did. So I was their 5th child out of the 6 they eventually had. And so this was like 98 is what we're talking about. So I was brought into the doctor's office. They gave me I believe it was a whooping cough shot. And then after that, I had a huge allergic reaction to it, like massive, like my whole body swelled up basically. And then it was just a huge, nasty allergic reaction to whatever was in it. And then I was never the same basically after that. And later on, I was diagnosed with Asperger's. Now, I do want to say before I get further in my story that there is a lot of scientists and doctors that will say that, mRNA vaccines or any vaccine itself doesn't do that. And they will just straight up just say that. But that is a lie. If you see doctors saying that, they're looking at data that has been skewed and portrayed in a very comforting light toward the medical industry. And I am proof of that there are people that have had reactions to that kind of stuff. Now, depending on what's in it, it was a specific thing called pertussis was the ingredient. That's what it was called. And I was at a doctor recently this year, and they looked that up and they said, we don't know what this is. But they could have misspelled it or whatever. But you can Google it and find out about it. But if you Google that, you can find that it was in vaccines, et cetera, that kind of thing. So that's what triggered the allergic reaction. And so from there, it was like, I was basically never the same. There was a lot of like, I wouldn't look people in the eye. I hated people touching me. It was very heartbreaking for my parents. And my mom's like, man, what do I do? And I want to get her on the podcast someday to talk about this, but we'll see. But anyway, she would tell me that, yeah, you were like, very, I guess antisocial is the word, but I didn't like people touching me. Whenever people would come through the front door at our house to come visit, I would run to the other room. Mm-hmm. And I did that for years. And because I was just scared of other people, I guess. Mm-hmm. And wouldn't look people in the eye, stuff like that. And I thought it was normal. I just like, but I knew something was wrong later on in terms of like, not everybody reacts this way, mm-hmm. And I wasn't like, as a kid, like ridiculed for that kind of behavior. But my mom was figuring out like, what do I do with this kid? How do I manage this? And so she was an awesome mom, by the way, amazing. And so my dad and all my siblings were so tolerant of me growing up. Like it was they're amazing people. And yeah, growing up was really tough. Like I would have meltdowns, stuff like that. And I've carried that basically my whole life. Nowadays different, but let me tell you how I've gotten to this point I am in. So when I was, I think like 8 or 10, I went to Zod's Karate and through many different like social things throughout the years, but I went to Zod's Karate in Chico and I met Master Zod and my parents were like, we're going to have you do karate and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And before all this, actually, my mom would be like, she'd actually play games with me where I would have to hug her for a certain amount of time. Aww. And it was really adorable. Like, she's like, all right, let's play. And like, I would give her a hug and she'd be like, all right, let's count 1, and I'll count to 10 or whatever. And then I would like go and play. She's like, oh, you did a good job. just to get me used to like hugging again.
That's so cute.
So it's really adorable. So she was really awesome and smart and figured out ways to, about this kind of thing.
That's awesome.
And when I went to a Zod's, I remember I would always look down. I would never look people up in the eye. Mm-hmm. I was a little kid. And Azad's like, all right, Jake, how are you doing? And like, it was my first time meeting him. I like looked down and he's like, no, I need you to look at me. Mm-hmm. And I had to like look at him and it was a struggle. I was like, arr, arr. So I was at Azad's for a couple years. I think Kung Fu Panda came out around that time. So they had Kung Fu Panda posters up and everything. Cool. And then the Karate Kid reboot happened and they had posters for Karate Kid. And I was there for about 2 or 3 years. Enjoyed it. And it helped me a lot with just being around people. It's a weekly thing I had to go do. Mm-hmm. And I was homeschooled too, so I didn't have a public education. So I was at home and not exposed to like a ton of folks. But I think that was better because I look at the like level of schooling I was doing at the time. Mm-hmm. Try not to cry. And it was like several grades back where I should have been for years. Mm-hmm. But by the end once I graduated high school, I think Algebra 2 was the highest one I did, which is like nowadays it's like you got to get like trigonometry and stuff like that, which is ridiculous. Right. Even calculus stuff even. Mm-hmm. But depends on where you go. But that was always a struggle for me. And I knew I would get eaten alive at a public school. For sure. Like 100%. So anyway, I went to Azad for a couple years. That helped out a lot. As I grew into a teenager, they said, well, he likes computers. What could we put him in next? And so I actually volunteered at a place called Computers for Classroom in Chico. Oh, cool. And that was another weekly thing I had to go do. And that was really, really cool. And I would just tear apart computers for recycling purposes. Mm. And that helped me a lot. And I actually met somebody who was a wonderful lady. Her name was Debbie. And she had a lot of like trauma and a lot of like, her husband passed away like a couple of years before that. Mm. And she was like still dealing with it. And she was a mess basically, but she was an awesome person, really great, really caring and considerate and kind. And that was kind of my first like experience like with somebody that kind of like I had to help out a little bit in terms that way, just like being comforting and loving, that kind of thing. And being like a helper in that sense. So there was that. And then I went to Butte College, and that was like totally like fish out of water because I was homeschooled my whole life.
Right.
So I graduated from high school, and legally that's a good thing you can do in California. Don't worry. Prayerfully it stays that way. You never know. But anyway, just throughout the years, my parents and siblings were so tolerant of me, and through all the meltdowns, through all this kind of stuff. And it was not easy at all for me or them, but they did a really amazing job. So anyway, a couple more things. I went to Butte College. I did all that. I did that. And like, it was such a weird thing to be in a classroom was my first reaction. And then it was also super defeating. And I knew I wasn't as smart as everybody because I'd be the last person to leave in class, like every single time we had class. And it was really, really like defeating and terrible. But God bless my teacher. Her name is Linda. God bless her, because she would stay there and just be in the classroom because she had to. But she would be there and answer questions and all this kind of stuff. And it was kind of like, first it was Debbie that helped me along, like Master Zod, then Debbie, then Linda. And then shout out to Linda. She actually helped me like in a lot of my growing process. One of those examples was there was a job opening at Butte College, and she knew I could get it. Nobody else was going for it in terms of like the other classmates. And so I applied for it. I was going to apply for it. And she said, "Did you apply for it yet?" This was after a big, she did a little speech beginning of class. And in front of everybody in the class, she asked me, "Have you applied to Butte College yet?" And I was like, kinda. And she's like, "What does kinda mean?" And I was like, whoa. And I was like she was like calling me out in front of all these people because I was a terrible procrastinator. And she knew it. And so she was like calling me out in front of all these people, and she like cursed at me and like all this stuff. And I was like, dang, whoa. And I was like, trying not to cry. And I was like, whoa, I just got, whoa, this is crazy. and then everybody else went home. She said, "It's an extra day. If you want to stay, you can." Like she was telling this to everybody, but you all can go. You're free to go. But me and one other guy stayed and catched up on our homework, and I worked on my application. And then I even got a chance to go talk to the lady that's leaving that they're hiring the position for to replace her. So I actually got to talk to her and kind of just ask her questions about the job and what to expect. And she gave me great like advice, like, "Oh, you'll want to do this if you're in the computer lab," and blah, blah, blah. And so inevitably, eventually I did get the job. And that's thanks to my supervisor, like Anna Leah. She really like somebody else next in my life that really helped me in my growing process and what I was going through. And just, she didn't like, you can't really like she knew like if I got hired, we'd be working together. And she's like, "You're a cool person, it'd be awesome for you to get this job. And, here's what to expect." And that's about it. But she really did help me a lot in that process and figuring out the right words to say, that kind of thing. So anyway, I eventually did the interviews, eventually did get the job. Awesome. And, I work a job here, work a job there. I'm an adult, and I'm growing and figuring out how to manage autism and kind of abating it and stuff like that. And I've never taken any medication for it. I found pomegranate juice works really well for my like mental, I don't know what to call it, Dave, mental capacity, focus. I don't know. It's full of antioxidants. It's really good for you. So
you heard it here first.
You heard it here, folks.
Full of antioxidants.
Full of antioxidants.
Cures autism.
But it's really good and it helps you focus. I also take stuff like krill oil is really good. I took fish oil for years, and krill oil is like super concentrate, like fish oil. Really does a good job helping me focus as well. So I take that and palm juice, and that really does every day and every morning to help me like focus. And even like, it's funny how weird my life has gone. I went to like IT and computers, helping out of college, to like fire abatement, water tending in the fire season. And I still had the pomegranate juice in that ice chest every day. I had the pomegranate juice, had my krill oil, all that stuff. So, but it's weird, the journey the journey of life that you go on in every step of the way. And I have a lot of people, my parents especially, my siblings, and all those other folks I mentioned too, like Azad, Debbie, Linda, and Aaliyah, all those folks that helped me along the way. And it was an answer to my parents' prayers, because as a parent, you're like, Lord, please let basically, Lord, please let cool people come along my son's path to help a brother out,
Absolutely.
But it's like, it was always like loving people who wanted me to do better and wanted me to do good.
Absolutely.
And to give me exactly what I need. Like Linda, she gave me a swift kick in the butt to get my life going. And there's been other folks as well. And especially when I worked at, the store and stuff like that, and it just helped me learn a lot. So that's my journey basically. And I don't have any expectations for you guys to be as open as you want. But yeah, that's my journey, and I'm really glad I didn't cry.
You did great, Jake.
Thank you. But I want to kind of pass along to you, David. I mean, we're talking about mental health. Part of my job at Butte actually is to help a lot of different students with their work and the computer issues and stuff like that. But it also kind of turns into a social worker position a little bit, because there's a lot of folks that have learning disabilities that are have mental challenges, and who are a little bit, what's the word, Stephanie, to use? Maybe scattered would be the word to use. Also homeless folks who have challenges as well. So my job kind of is that as well. I mean, but anyway, what's your experience? And I don't know, where do you want to take it from here? I'm curious.
I guess I'll just give my my own experiences with mental health struggles. Where do I begin? So many mental health struggles. So many mental health struggles.
So many.
Right.
So a countless number of them.
What is happening?
Okay.
Anyway,
so
sorry.
I guess I'll start with my mom passing away, because basically I'm going to talk about depression. So, and that was kind of the root of it for me. So when she passed away in 2002, right? Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah. So I was 11 at the time, and she passed away after a lengthy battle with cancer. And at the time, I don't ever remember it really affecting me, or going through grieving in any way at the time. But later on down the line, it certainly had some effects. So basically, it kind of started probably around junior high. So 6th, 7th, 8th grade, that sort of range. I started doing really poorly in school. It wasn't that I was not understanding the material. In fact, I had the opposite problem. I understood the material really, really well, and often didn't need to do any of the work or even listen to the teacher talk, and I would just ace the test. And what would end up happening is I would just not do any of the work. I would just not pay attention during class, and I just didn't want to do it. And so, my dad took me in to see some people, and some lady eventually ended up diagnosing me with ADD and Asperger's syndrome, which I don't believe that's a correct diagnosis looking back at my life. And also, I remember she was kind of a crackpot. So
she had some issues as well.
I briefly, they put me on a couple different medications briefly, and long story short, it didn't help at all. Into high school, I still had the same issues. It was getting to the point where I was failing classes where I could explain some of the concepts better than the teacher.
Whoa.
I was just that disinterested in doing the work, being in class. I hated school. I was kind of a loner. And yeah, so basically I got to a point in my life where my senior year of high school, it was a senior or junior. I want to say early in my senior year, I think it was. It might have been my junior year though. I got fed up, and I was like, I'm not going to take this medication anymore because it doesn't help at all. I don't know if either of you have seen the King of the Hill episode where Bobby gets diagnosed with ADHD.
Oh yeah,
but I actually had the same experience.
It's a glorious episode, actually.
So we're going back. So we're going back to me in junior high. When I first took the medication that they put me on, I had the same experience. Like I was hyper aware of everything that was going on. I was like, whoa. But then after that first experience, like it was like it didn't do anything for me at all. So that's a little bit of history. And then going forward now to senior year of high school, and I'm sick and tired of taking this medication thinking that, this doctor prescribed it to me, so it must be doing something, but it's not doing anything. I'm still having all the same issues that I was. And so I just stopped taking it. And at that point, I think my dad didn't care anymore either. He was just like, yeah, whatever. I don't even think I told him, but also we didn't go back and get any more either. So at that point, I think both of us were just done with the trying to attack it from a medical perspective. Because, so I graduated high school just barely. Yeah, because I hated school.
You graduated.
Hated school. I took like one semester of college thinking, oh, maybe that'll be different. Maybe I'm just wired differently and I need the college experiences where I'll really flourish. Nope, same thing. Hated it. And also too, like college was my first exposure to like, the really like crazy hyper liberal like Marxist professors, like
this ain't my jam.
Like third wave, like third wave feminism burning their bra type people, and so like I was never really political, but I definitely wasn't one of those. So being subjected to that,
folks.
Wow,
definitely being subjected to those folks definitely is like, I hate this even more.
Yeah. Well, dude,
because it was not only was it totally on me, there was no longer like, there was no longer teachers coming by my side as like, how can I help you with this? How can I help you with this? Because I had a lot of great, I went to Hamilton for high school. There was a lot of great teachers, a lot of great people who came alongside me, tried to help me out, cut me a lot of slack. So it was basically, they were the ones who basically ensured that I graduate. And then when I started in college, it was completely different. It was all on me, and I was taking classes I didn't want to take, and these hyper weird feminist professors, and it was all bad. And so like after one or two semesters, something like that, I was just like, nah, I guess school is just not for me. But I didn't have a job at that time. I just didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to get up in the morning. Like, I would spend my days like just to do something. I'd like go out and walk around town, and just like, I lived in Orland at the time, and I just walk around the streets of Orland just to stave off the creeping boredom. But like, I didn't want to do anything. I didn't have the will to do anything with my life. And I tried joining the military. So I enlisted in the Air Force. I went to MEPS, they touched me in all the wrong spots and did all the tests and all the things that, young people wanting to join the military have to get done. And then it got to the point where I filled out my medical history. And later on, I met a lot of people who were in the military or had previously in the military that told me, man, you should have just lied on your application.
I think I know who you're talking about.
I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know that's what you were supposed to do. I told the truth. I put down what medicine I took. And, that was the disqualifying factor because ADD was a disqualifying condition. So by admitting that I took medication for it, it basically, they were like, no, we don't want you anymore.
Right.
And like I was all set to go into, like I aced the ASVAB, everything was done. I was about to sign the paperwork. You know, the lady who gave you the physical did all the things and reached up in all the places that I didn't want her to reach. I went through the whole Monty, and then right at the last minute, they're like, "Nope, we don't want you." And so yeah, after that, I was like, I didn't have anything anymore. I mean, I knew at that point, I was like, I was living with my aunt, and she was just basically helping me out, giving me a place to stay. I didn't have a job. I didn't have the will or the energy to look for a job. So like looking back on that, after I got some healing from that, I could see that my struggle wasn't with autism or ADD or anything like that. My struggle was with depression from not grieving my mom's death. And so yeah, I ended up totally by the grace of God being hooked up with some people who were starting a youth ministry in I hope that doesn't get picked up. But we're starting a youth ministry in Orland. And I got hooked up with them, just helping them out with getting it set up and everything. And through doing that, I was able to see what it looked like for a person to, because I had grown up in the church, but I was able to really see people who had been through struggles in their life and had found healing and deliverance for whatever they had gone through in the Lord, and had actually been successful in doing so. And so that being in that environment helped me to get back on track, helped me to realize that I had some purpose in life, and I eventually worked through my issues. And so I was able to, I started looking for work and, doing all the things that adults are supposed to do. And I didn't have that like crippling, like, I don't want to even get up in the morning kind of a thing anymore. So, I guess I've never really talked about this in depth with a whole lot of people before, but why not? I'll bare my soul for a little bit. Even though I've gotten over it, I still sometimes find that if I'm not careful, my mindset could easily go back to that spot. Like the temptation is there.
Yeah.
Sometimes to go back to a mental state where I'm like, what's the purpose of all this? Why am I even doing this? I don't want to do anything. Like, I don't have the energy to do anything. It seems like nothing matters, So the temptation at times is definitely there to return to that mindset. But knowing the victory I've had over this issue and working through it with, through other people and just through the grace of God, knowing the victory I've had working through this issue, now I can recognize when those thoughts come, and I can choose to not go back to that mindset now. But yeah, so that's kind of where I've been with mental health. It's been a thing. I don't really know what else to add to it. But yeah.
Well, thanks, David.
Yeah,
That's amazing. What a journey.
It's a cool journey. I always remembered, like, especially in that youth ministry thing you were talking about, like, oh, David's here, David's helping out and all this kind of stuff. So it was like, I remember you were always a good presence always there. So, I mean, doing good, man. And yeah, God's leading you in cool places. I'm excited to see where it leads you. So, before I hand it to you, Stephanie, I do want to say youth group was a huge thing for me too. Like being part of youth group, and especially as a teenager, and being homeschooled, that was like a huge deal to go there every Saturday. And my brother and wife Mandy were super supportive and helpful in that too. And very good mentoring people. It's for a lot of folks, not just me.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, in inevitability of leading part of the youth group as well, like they gave the kid with autism like in charge of texting everybody for the week. And so I would overthink and be like, okay, we're going to Waterworks, so you got to bring your swimming stuff. Oh, this is the youth group swimming code and all that kind of stuff. So it's like they gave the kid with autism the ability to text everybody. And so that was enabled me to break through a lot of social boundaries and or not boundaries, but social anxiety. So
That's
it was
awesome.
really a lot to go through. But anyway, journeys. Stephanie, how about your journey?
So there's two things I'm going to start with.
You whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, so two things. I'm not throwing this at you, David, but
You suck.
we are not. I just like trigger warning here. We're not doctors, so if you
we're
are
not
taking
doctors. We're just
medication,
this is our own experience.
Yeah.
Like that's
we're not
our live
telling
life,
you to cut cold turkey.
Yeah.
Like I'm just saying, like because
yeah.
if you feel like your medication's not working, go talk to your
Yeah.
provider. Do not take our advice.
Yeah.
Cold turkey.
Me sharing my story was not a blanket approval
Absolutely.
on anyone else
Screw your
doing
doctor,
the same thing. Everybody's situation is different.
Yeah. Don't-
everybody's situation's
Don't
different.
throw them in a field somewhere, please.
Yeah.
The second thing is
what's your second thing?
what I do in my professional life. I feel like that does have value here. I am a non-clinical community health worker. And so I work with homeless, at risk of homeless, substance use disorders, and serious mental illness from children to adults to families. So I do it in my professional life, and I have a lot of personal experience with mental health and mental illness. I am going to discuss two personal experiences, but I'm just going to graze over them. Otherwise, we would be here for like a week. So I'm going to talk about my sister, who is a couple years younger than me, first, and then I'll talk a little bit about my own journey. I have a sister who got diagnosed with, at the time, paranoid schizophrenia when she was 20. She is 37 now. So she's been struggling it for the past 17 years. She lives with my parents. She will probably never be on her own. She has the mentality probably of a 12-year-old. She has been on God knows how many different medications. Every time she sees a new psychiatrist, they diagnose her with something else. She's had, so you never really know what you're going to get. She struggled her entire life. When she was little, she got diagnosed with ADD, and this was in the late 80s, early 90s, when this stuff, I hate to say it, started to be a trend. When everyone was getting diagnosed with something, then my parents, like Jake, you were talking about, you did the best you could. And David, you brought up, when you go to the doctor, you're going to give me things and I'll be totally fine. And that's not necessarily the truth. And we were talking about this before we started recording. It's like you don't know the right concoction of medication that will work. And if you're given one that doesn't work, you're like, well, screw this. I'm not going back in. They lied to me. Right? So for years and years, I watched my parents struggle and my sister struggle with her journey from schooling, being in special education. Praise God, she graduated high school.
Hey,
that's a win. Hey, she did it.
Win.
I think she even did take some college classes before she got diagnosed with schizophrenia. There are stories for days that we've seen her just really struggle. And, we're thank God that she is stable now. And she has a lot of help since they've moved to Butte County, and she's actually going to a group, and she's a lot healthier than she used to be. So that's my sister in a nutshell. And then there's me. So I have struggled with, back in the day, it was depression. When I was in my early teens, I went and saw a therapist, and I didn't want to talk to anybody, which probably doesn't surprise the guys at all. Not at all. I hate attention. So if anyone comes at me, I'm like, why are you talking to me? Please don't make eye contact. So yum.
Out of a demon.
No, David, no.
No, David, no.
Either that was like BS, Stephanie, or it was an actual
that was an actual cough.
Lies.
That was totally an actual cough. You
I
know?
don't believe you.
Is that what the title of the episode is going to be? Cough,
man.
mental health.
On a humorous aside, that reminds me of, I think it was it was some YouTube video I saw. They were talking about like poorly disguised cough talking. And they'd be like, you're a loser. Like that. So if I was gonna do like some like, like cough talking, I'd do something like that. You know, I like to keep things out in the open.
My dad, I can't tell you what it would sound like because it's incredibly inappropriate. But when he would cough, it rhymes with horse. And so I was like, did you just call me?
Oh my gosh.
Because no, I would never do such things. So I was like, Dad, okay, anyway.
That's terrible. Good job, Dad. No, joking.
Love you, Dad.
Yeah, we love you, Dad.
I know you're going to hear this. And then I feel like my mom's making that face right now. Oh my gosh.
Oh my
Stephanie,
gosh.
Please don't.
You brought that up, Doctor. All right. Anyway.
So back to my glorious journey. So at the time, I feel super old right now. So it was the late 90s when I first found out about the depression and everything. And I had a similar high school journey to you. I knew all the work, but I didn't care about doing it. Why would I do it? This sucks. And it was sad because I really love to learn and I love the material and I will soak all the things up. And I feel like if I had more mentors on my side, I would have really thrived. And obviously I take accountability because I was a little brat, but yeah, if I knew the things. So as I got older, my sister was diagnosed. I knew I was struggling with some things. I'm just talking on the microphone. Struggling with some things, and some stuff started happening. And I noticed that I wasn't really managing it very well. And the unfortunate side of that, I ended up turning to alcohol to cope with a lot of it. And you'll find that's actually really common in people who have mental illness and they're not really taking care of it. They will resort to some sort of substance, or it could be overeating. You'll hear about stress eating or shopping to go get their dopamine kick, right? Yeah. Or they over exercise. It manifests in something else. And unfortunately, mine was drinking. And I was not, and I was good for so long, but then I would pick it up again because something would go wrong and I would go drink. I knew I had a problem around when I was 26 years old. I was a manager for a big box store. And my stress was through the roof. And I'm like, there's something just really, really off. I ended up being hospitalized for the first time. And they diagnosed me with depression, which I knew that's what it was.
Thanks, guys.
Cool.
Wow, I'm already new.
Thank you. Look who's calling the kettle black, or cauldron black. And I had already sought help before I was hospitalized. And it just wasn't working. And so it was really sad. I had to take a couple months off of work. Thank God that my family was there and my husband was there and they really helped me through it. And I had some really close friends that did too. I did really well for a very long time. And so I was 25, 26 when that happened. And I'm 39 now. I did really well for, like I said, a long time. And then the past 2 to 3 years have been very tumultuous. And like I had said, it's life things that if it was spread out over a longer period of time, I felt like I would have been able to manage these things better. The fact that it's been so compacted and it was trauma after trauma after trauma, I didn't have enough space to process things. And I have a really bad habit of not reflecting on those things, and I engage myself in other things. So I will over volunteer. I'm getting side eyes from Jake. I will, as much as I'm doing youth ministry and I love it. And I was a volunteer police officer and I recently resigned. Any like disasters that we have, I have a tendency to just jump in and help our friends who've been affected by it. And because I do these things to avoid what's going on in my mind, because I don't want to deal with what's going on in myself, because and then that makes it real.
Yeah.
If I just maybe I'll just forget it. These things really didn't happen, but it just kills you inside.
Yeah.
And then you just snap. So I started seeing a psychiatrist last May, after a pretty big trauma, and I'm glad I started. And then it comes with all the medicine and trying to find that perfect concoction. And then another trauma happened not too long after that. And I noticed that I started drinking again, and it could be very detrimental because one of the medicines I'm on can cause seizures.
Ooh.
And when you're not managing your mental health, you don't care what the side effects may be, even it's going to kill you. Okay. And I was hiding it from everybody. And that's really sad because you're ashamed, right? You feel guilty. And so it's like, and then there's your mental illness too. You feel like crap. You want to hide. David, you're talking about that. And so this all just happened. So the past like couple of months, I still had been drinking. And then I had an incident with a family member, which was another trauma that was pretty severe. And I ended up having a severe panic attack. And I was in the prompt care. And I had to get my medication altered again. And it takes, for me, my medication peaks out 4 weeks. And it varies from person to person, but usually it's about 4 to 6 weeks to really know how it's going to affect you. And about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, sorry about that, my medication peaked in my system, and we had a situation where I was in mental crisis, and I ended up being in the hospital in ICU for it. And I'm really lucky to be here today after that incident. And it's trying to work through all of these things that have happened in a healthy way. I have to advocate for myself. And so I started talk therapy, which I feel like it's really beneficial. I also got a new concoction of medication. I clearly haven't been drinking any alcohol. That experience was so terrifying. I will never touch it again. I have been so lucky especially the last couple of weeks. My house has been like Grand Central Station of all the support and love that not just me, but my family has gotten. And we have such an amazing village, including these guys sitting in front of me. It's just listening to somebody is so important. Like you don't even have to do anything, or just, hey, I need to talk to you. Can you just lend me your ear? And that can mean the world to somebody. You could just save a life by doing that. So talking just one more or maybe two more things, and I'm going to hand it back to Jake. With medication and talk therapy, I study all this stuff all the time. I'm an avid reader, and an interesting analogy in a book. This person's in the middle of a lake, and there's a hole in the bottom of his boat. And he's taking buckets of water and he's throwing it out of the boat. Now, let's say that's medication, but there's still a hole in the bottom of this boat. You get talk therapy, it can amend the bottom of the boat, and you'll be able to float. And I really like that analogy, because you also hear, well, I'm just on medication. Oh, well, I just want to do talk therapy. Until you're completely stable, it might be better to do both to keep your boat floating. So Another thing is that if people are interested in this topic, I'm sure Jake will reference some things. I'm going to give him a couple links. Nope,
okay,
he said
you got links?
I got links, dude. I'll just throw them at you.
I was going to be like, okay.
And the other,
go do your own research, Jake.
I'm planting a seed and putting Jake to work. Another seed is if you guys are interested in this topic as well, we've had discussed because there's a lot to this subject. We can go further with this. I'll talk it over with them, and because there's a lot of information, but we all have a lot of stories. So I think it'd be good to continue this conversation as well.
Yeah. If it's okay, I actually wanted to kind of add one thing.
Please, yeah.
So yeah, you mentioned talk therapy. In our culture, when somebody comes to you with a problem, I feel like a lot of the time, the person listening, their response is, okay, I'm going to listen to your thing and then I'm going to offer you advice so we can fix the problem because I want to help you. I want to find you a solution.
Right.
And the interesting thing about, so I was watching something, what was I? Jordan Peterson. That's who I was watching. So he's a famous clinical psychologist, and he was talking about therapy. And so he was mentioning something about basically you can tell a person the answer to the struggles they're having is this, this, and this, and this. But until the desire to actually do those things comes from within them, they're not actually going to do it.
Amen.
And so what's interesting about just listening to somebody, and that's what Mr. Peterson was saying, a good therapist is trained to do more than anything else is to simply listen without getting in the way. When you just listen to somebody, it basically allows them space to start processing what they're going through. And what you find is when people feel like they've been heard, they start to find solutions to their problems. And, they might require somebody, to kind of point them in a direction. But ultimately, the result of the therapy is that they actually come up with the solutions to their own problems. So I bring this up just to I want to point out that listening is a very, very powerful thing. So this is kind of my to all the Snarp Fangle people out there, if somebody comes to you and wants to talk to you about something they're struggling with, my sort of, and this is actually advice as opposed to the stopping medication thing. This is actually advice that I would say resist the urge to try and fix their problem right there and right then, and simply listen. Because honestly, the power of listening to somebody is very understated I feel like in our culture. So that's all I wanted to talk about.
And it's interesting because I think we've all had those moments where people come up to us and they want to, it just happened to come to the topic of what they're dealing with, what they're going through. And I think you're right, David. I think especially what Peterson goes into, he is so on point with how the human mind works and how to handle that. And it's cool to see his spiritual walk and him trying to figure and wrap his mind around that. That's his next goal and what he's been working through the last couple of years. But anyway, I think, yes, listening is the key, really. I mean, I've experienced it in so many different scenarios. I mean, from youth ministry to working at Butte, just all aspects of life. And with teenagers specifically, it's really difficult because they don't want to talk, like you were bringing up, Stephanie. So it's you kind of have to pin and prod and just bring up stuff and kind of navigate what they're wanting to, what they're going through, And sometimes it's just being a presence. Excuse me. Sometimes it's just being a presence with them. And that is a huge help. I remember when we were going through the pandemic in our tutoring center, we would just have students working with a tutor and they would just be in the same Zoom call and they wouldn't ask. They were there if they, needed help, asking for help, that kind of thing. But they mostly just needed somebody there not like an accountability partner, but somebody that is there so that they can like, oh, somebody's there. Let me focus on my work now instead of just doing it by themselves. And I found that really, really interesting because I'm like, in my mind is like, oh, like my mind, like I'm analyzing like, oh, it's like accountability, blah, blah, blah. And I'm doing my work. So somebody's there. So I'm like, oh, kind of like if somebody starts cleaning something, you kind of have, everybody's different, but some people have the urge like, oh, if they're doing something like that, I should probably be doing the same thing. Or like we were talking about the taco feed, like we kind of want to avoid the kids sitting down on the job a lot of the times because once one sits down, then the next one sits down, and then it becomes a normalized thing. So I find it really important because, I mean, even I think of my experience in a lot of the computer science classes, which, by the way, David, I was going to bring up, I never took any of the GE at Butte College, ever. I took one GE class and that was it. And it was like college life or whatever. And I avoided all of it because I just wanted to take the computer stuff. And that's all I took was the computer stuff. I didn't take any GE. I never got my degree. I think all I have to do is go finish my GE and that's it. Then I can get something. But I just avoided that because I knew I can't do math and English. Like I could, but it would be tough. But again, you have to have that right teacher to teach you. So, but anyway, in the CSCI classes, there was a lot of veterans and I got to meet and talk with a lot of them. And it was interesting because I kind of half expected some of them to be like, and a lot of them are no nonsense, including Linda was the same way. So it was kind of perfect. She had to work with a lot of veterans because they had the same wavelength, like no nonsense, stuff like that. Like life is like stupid enough. Don't bring more silliness into it. But they went through, there's a lot of folks that went through a lot. And it was really enlightening to talk to them about their experiences and what they're going through and figuring out. I mean, from people who have helper animals to, you know, folks who are just there trying to, you know, get a better job, you know, something easier for them to do and that they can focus on. And it was really cool to help them out. And I worked with a lot of veterans too in my line of work. And it's always important to listen, whether it be the kid come fresh out of high school, the old folk that are coming back to school. And by old folk, I mean like people in their 60s and 70s, not just, you know, back to school 30s, 40s, 50s, which are also there too. But with all those kind of folks, it's so important to listen because you never know what everybody's going through. You don't know. You never know what kind of journey they're on or where they're at. And you're just kind of it sounds kind of mean, but you are in a way a stepping stone in their path or something that they're coming alongside in their path. And it's only going to be for a temporary time or just for a season even, or a semester.
David.
And we'll cut that out. But it's I think listening's the key. And there's been a lot of points where I've failed and I wasn't listening. Right. And I can think back on that and look back and say, oh man, I should not have like interjected there or something like that. But you know, you live and you learn. So
if I can,
on
that subject. So I'm going to go back to what David said. And a mantra in the agency I work at is that you lead a horse to water, but necessarily not make them drink it. And clearly in my own life, that people, even my parents after my diagnosis, they were not surprised, right? I got diagnosed with a bipolar 2 disorder, which back in the day was called manic, some major depressive, something. And I recently just found that out from my therapist. She goes, bipolar 2 is equated to that because similar to autism, the spectrum, bipolar is like the big thing now. Everyone has bipolar disorder. I'm exaggerating. So
sure feels that way sometimes. You know.
So oh my goodness. So leave the horse to water concept and active listening. That we're actually trained at my job to do active listening. So I'm not there to give you advice. I'm just listening to your story. And clearly when you're talking, yes, oh, I get it. Not necessarily I understand because these are your experiences. Yeah. Any advice that I'm going to give you is going to be based on my life, my values, my beliefs, and my experiences. And I'm not, and this other thing that I try to affirm with my family as well. Am I listening to you or am I giving you advice? am I just going to wait for my turn to talk? And I'm not really listening. I'm not doing active listening, right? So those are things that I feel like everyone struggles with too. And I really was thinking about that when you're talking. But I was listening to you, David, just saying. I wasn't just waiting for my turn to talk. I promise, David. Thanks. Wow. I feel like it was like 2 against 1 today. So...
All against David? What?
No, all against me.
Oh, you? What are you talking? I thought it was you guys against me.
No. Jake, you getting sassy.
Yeah. Anyway. Shoot, where were you going with that? You were active listening and...
Yeah, I was just...
Yeah, okay.
Piggyback on him. I don't know. You're in your own world
I guess I was in my little word. But
were you active listening to me, Jake?
Probably not.
I didn't think so. Tune me out. But you did. Okay.
Well, I think back on like there's several experiences I've had where people like just and just all their like life story comes out, and I'm just sitting there like, okay, whatever, Right, that's happened enough times where I'm like, just okay, cool. Like if that's what we're talking about right now, that's what we're talking about. No worries. And my job is kind of like to help people in that, in terms of like school can be really stressful and extremely stressful. And that's my job to kind of help them along and to be like, oh, hey, this is how you do that. And that's how you do this, and no rush, and, go through the process. And most importantly, teach them how to use a computer so that they don't have to come back to me. That's one thing that I really strive to do. And so I'll like give them the mouse and keyboard. I won't grab it. I'll let them do it, and I'll point to where they need to go. And it's really, truly, you can provide all the answers, kind of like Jordan Peterson was saying. You can provide all the answers to their problems, but, and especially in youth ministry when we were doing this, like you can give people the answers, the word, the gospel, all that kind of stuff, but it's up to them.
The tools, it doesn't
the
really,
tools,
the goals.
Stuff. Yeah. And sometimes people will know the solution. And I've struggled with this too in walks of my different parts of my life. Like I know the solution, but I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Like they have to take the initiation to do it. They have to take the imperative to fix.
I feel like you like closed in on the right word. You were like circling around it. You said initiation and then imperative, but you meant to say initiative.
Sorry, initiative. I was so close.
Coming in hot with that
initiative.
You were circling around it.
Yeah, the initiative.
I was waiting for David to correct him. I was like, David's going to do it. I won't do it. They're going to kick me off this podcast. So,
well, I think it's interesting because it's funny how, like, I remember you were talking about this with us, and you had a list here of like films that Hollywood had depicting mental health. Silver Linings Playbook's the one that stood out to me.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
And I've only seen bits and pieces of it, but I remember seeing the interview with the guy that directed and wrote it with his brother, who it's based off of, and just like his brother's leaning up against him, like he has bipolar or whatever he was diagnosed with.
Right.
And I was like, I could just see his brother, the guy who directed and wrote it, his brother, like he loves his brother so much. Like you can tell that he loves him. And it was just so inspiring, because I think there's so many people out there that have come along my path to help me. And I think before we get out of here, I think it'd be good to go over and thank some people that have helped us in our lives. That's to close out. But before we do that, was there anything you guys want to bring up in terms of, because for me, like I have stuff listed here, like why did stuff start like happening this way? Like you were saying, Stephanie, like in the late 80s, early 90s, it seems like stuff like this was happening. And I think a lot of truth is coming out in the recent decade that has a lot to do with what big pharma and big food and all this kind of stuff, FDA stuff has in the food.
Careful, Jake.
I know. I'm just saying.
Someone on the internet's going to call us chuds.
Oh, Stephanie, got to look at one of the highlights we did. It was hilarious. But anyway, well, they're going to probably listen to this. Shout out to you guys.
Let's hope.
Yeah. Shout out to you guys in the comments.
Get your tinfoil hats ready and your metal colanders, or what? I think
there's some very interesting things if you do your research, like Thad and us were talking about the other week.
Right.
And you can find out there's quite a bunch of weird stuff that's in the food, that's in just different parts of the U.S. with water. There's different places. Yeah, the drunk frogs and everything. I don't even. There's just especially the stuff that like Robert F. Kennedy is bringing up too this time in the last couple like months about what's in the food and what this means. And because there's stuff in our food that is in there. I'm not going to say what it is. You can do your own research, but like there's stuff in here that is banned in Europe. And there's a reason why it's banned in Europe. And you're like, because it's not healthy first off. But number two, a lot of it is like chemicals and toxic stuff that is just shouldn't be in food that they use. And it's like, why is this even in here? Probably because of cutting costs, most likely. It's all about money in the end. But we have what we have, and we have to deal with that. And medication's an avenue. I know my parents like really didn't want to do medication. They kept telling like, specifically not for autism, they wanted me to go on ADHD medication. Yeah. But I had ADD, not ADHD.
And there's a difference.
And they really wanted me to go on medication, and they were against that. They said, nope, sorry, not going to happen. And I was really proud of them in hindsight doing that. They really did try with that and said, no, we're not going to do any medication.
Yeah. Definitely, none of us are doctors.
No, we're not doctors.
So we're not saying that nobody should take medication.
No.
But in
my experience,
both of our experiences, in both of our experiences, we found that we ran into where basically medication was being pushed that was not addressing the addressing the problem.
Yeah, and some people go on medication and it works really well for them. And they finally find like your concoction, like you were saying, Stephanie, and stuff that works for them. There's a podcast I was listening to, and the guy was talking about pot specifically, and how he says, oh, I'm a pothead and I've been smoking so long. And he's like, I'm kind of starting to get off of it. And because he's like, I don't get high from it anymore. He's like, I'm just smoking because, whatever, kind of focus, habit. And he's like, but now I'm starting to, and there's even people in the comments of his podcast saying, oh yeah, like you should just try to get off of it. And he's like, I tried doing, like I was on it. I was like smoking pot or, brownies and whatnot for 10 years. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this, but the guy said that he eventually got off of it and his life got better. He was able to focus more and put stuff in hindsight. And it's also chemical makeup's really weird with our brains. That's another aspect. Like for me, I had an allergic reaction to something in a vaccine. Not everybody's going to have that reaction. No. Everybody's different. And the chemical makeup of your brain, all this kind of stuff, just everybody has different reactions to different stuff. So if you need to take medication, if you need to smoke pot, sure, why not? Medical use is medical use. Like if it helps you, it helps you. And some people doesn't help them. So
I can piggyback on that. So my daughter is 9 right now, 9.5. She's almost 10. I can't remember. And so when she was little, and I'm sure your parents had noticed, and it's really hard as a parent because your kids are a guinea pig, right? You never know what's going to work.
Yeah.
I had a sense that something was off. And I had a lot of experience, but not as a parent. We actually just discussing that over dinner last night. I never even changed a diaper until I had my daughter in the hospital and I was 30. So I was talking to my husband and we knew something was off. And as she progressed in age, and we had a trauma happen when she was 7, and she came up to me and said, Mom, I think I need to talk to somebody. And to have that self-awareness so young is exceptional. And I called our pediatrician and we sat together and talked to her doctor. And which I got to commend this doctor 100%. He didn't just pump her full of meds. He referred her out to talk to another professional, another provider. Good. Which I praise this man, because I was like, if you're just going to pump my daughter for pills, I don't want to do that. Yeah. Because we had avoided it for so long. Yeah. Right. And that's part of why my daughter is homeschooled, because if I kept her in traditional, they legally can't tell your kids to take meds, even at a homeschool or a charter. Yeah. But there can be an implication. Oh, did you get her tested for ADHD? They can do that, but they can't diagnose, like we were just talking about. Yeah. And so we waited all that time, and my daughter was really suffering, and we didn't want that. Clearly she's a young, vivacious sassy thing. She got diagnosed with PTSD, ADHD, and anxiety disorder. And we already knew she had a pretty severe anxiety disorder. She had gone through similar things to you, Jake. She became very apathetic. We were talking about that, David. And for a young child to go through that, not wanting to leave the house, sleeping 14 hours a day, that's not living. You're just surviving.
Yeah.
And so finding that concoction, like we were just talking about, and gosh, the side effects to some of these medications. I was talking about that to somebody else recently. Impending doom is one of my favorite ones. Or antidepressants, suicidal ideations.
Suicidal ideations.
Yeah, or suicidal tendencies. So like you can go do these things, but it's supposed to help stabilize you. We're talking about chemicals as well.
Mm-hmm.
These are all mind-altering drugs, and you never know what you're...
And also, like, I mean, with people with ADD and ADHD, it's the way I describe it to people, and if you take offense to it, you can, but it's just how it is. Literally, like, it's scientifically proven, wires are crossed and the behaviors are managed differently.
Yeah.
And there's a remedy for it, and there's ways to navigate around it. And that's why I'd say the education system, like, same thing with the education system, like, a PowerPoint doesn't work for everybody.
No.
Kinetic learning doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
You have to figure out what works for you and and apply it to your life.
Amen.
And that's really difficult. And it's cool that people like you and your job are able to help people and figure out the best way out of what they're currently in. But in the end, you have to want it. But it's also great that parents like you are trying to figure this out and get it going. Because there's some that just don't care too, which my heart goes out to those kids too. So
you're the biggest advocate for your kids.
Yep.
You know, you have to not just advocate for yourself, but you advocate for your children because you're the warrior for them.
Yeah.
So
and that's something that I always thought of, like, especially like as an adult, like, man, if I have kids, like, I was like, oh man, I'm so stressed out with what's going on right now. But I'm like, well, if I have kids, the stress not going to go away. So I need to handle and manage the stress, so that when I do have kids, I can figure out and not worry about myself, worry about them.
Right. And validate them and give them that validity. Because that if you discredit them, like if I just told my daughter to get over it, can you imagine?
Oh, God.
That would just destroy it. And then we work with teenagers. All three of us are youth ministers. So it's like, if we tell, you're just a teenager, you don't understand.
No.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, that's, we can go down that rabbit hole another time. But you have to validate them. That feels real to them. It is real to them.
And a lot of that starts with listening.
Amen. Look at you come back around.
Yeah. Well, I kind of want to go through before we get out of here, because I need to get going too.
Yeah, totally.
So,
yep.
But what are 2 or 3 folks throughout your life that have helped you along your way that you want to thank? And I'm going to start with you, Stephanie.
Oh, that's such a loaded question.
You can, if you need to think about it, I can have David.
Oh, get these 3 people.
I can start. How about I start off?
Nope.
No,
I'm taking
you got it.
So my number 1, I'm putting 3 people in my number 1.
Okay.
I'm going to do it.
Sure.
My mom, who actually suggested the points of this podcast. We appreciate you, Mom.
Yeah.
My father and my brother. I love all of you dearly, and I greatly. Oh, it's gonna make me cry. And I should say my husband, right?
4 and number 1.
Those 4. I greatly appreciate all of them and walking alongside me this very tumultuous journey. My number 2 slot, they're slots now, not like, okay.
Horizontal slots.
My ride or die, they know who they are. I will mention one of them who is no longer with us. He would answer his phone day and night. Even if he was on tour, it didn't matter. He was my rock for 20 years, and I miss him dearly, but he would be so proud. He'd probably be on this podcast with us today if he was here. And my number 3 slot is all of the friends, families from your parents, Jake, to the Kringles families. And our family's been adopted into these families, and it's been such a blessing. And I'm the Houston family, Flahardy family, Schumann's, all these families. You guys are such a blessing to us because I wouldn't have been able to be here without any of you. So there's all my slots. Yeah, well, you're welcome.
We love you, and we're
don't make me cry.
Yeah, we love you, and we're glad you're around, and
thank you.
Want to keep you around. So
I'm adopted. Yay!
All right, David, do you want me to go first or you?
It doesn't matter.
Go, David.
Okay.
I'll put you on the spot.
All right. Let's see. So people I want to thank. Yeah. Myself first and foremost.
I made it. I didn't give in.
The glorious David.
I want to thank myself too, David, that I didn't unalive myself at any point. You know.
Oh my god.
Way too much ego for me right
now. That was a joke.
Yeah.
For legal reasons.
That was a joke.
All right. Anyway, so yeah, I'd like to thank my aunt specifically. She really helped me out a lot. In the time period where I was struggling and I didn't know what to do with my life, and I had no desire to do anything with my life. I also want to thank, there's a few people, if they're listening to this, they know who they are, who came alongside me, in my post-high school period, and really helped me rediscover meaning to my life. And then, I just also, I'm really grateful to basically, all of my friends, family, my brothers and sisters in Christ, especially, who have been there for me over the years. I would not be where I am today without their support. So yeah, that's it for me.
We love you, David.
Yeah, we love you, David.
You're amazing.
I love you, brother.
Well,
it's my turn now.
And that concludes our episode. No, for me, I think I'm gonna do a similar thing to you, Stephanie. Like a similar slot of 1 slot and 2 slots. So 1 slot would have to be all my family, like brothers and sisters. I'm one of 6. And then there's 2 adopted as well. And they were all super, super supportive of me and helped me through a ton of different things and had so much tolerance of me, like whether it be through meltdowns in childhood or like just obsessively obsessing over like different YouTubers throughout the years and different other stuff, that they just had so much patience with me. So I appreciate them. And then of course my parents, oh my God, like just helping me and fostering me into who I am today. Really, really amazing. And then slot 2, so first family and, everybody, just my whole family in general, all the nieces and nephews, the whole family, everybody. And then I would have to do slot 2, just the people I've met along the way that have really tried to invest in me. Like you, Stephanie, and all the folks at the church, even before, like as we in our church, David, even all those folks long time ago that were there, I would have to thank them, everybody at the church. And then, I would have to thank those people I mentioned before, like, even though I was only for a season, but like Master Zod, and I think he's still around actually. Master Zod, Debbie, Analia, all the people who I've helped with at my work, and they've helped me. It's just a really awesome answer to prayers for my parents, because it was them praying for those people in my life. And it's cool to also see, like, especially like the water tending stuff, to see people look out for me and protect me, especially like my boss and stuff throughout those times. And it's really cool to see that. And it's cool to also be that for other folks. So I think that's enough thanking for now, but I just want to say I love you all, you out there, if you're listening. So anyway, I will have to say that's about it. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Snarp Fangle Podcast. If you have any comments, concerns, or debates of Jordan Peterson's authenticity with spirituality, please direct them at snarpfanglepod@gmail.com or in the comments section down below. And we hope you have a wonderful day, and we thank you so much for taking your time. And also want to thank Stephanie for coming over here, taking her time. Her kids are just gnawing at the bit to get out of here. They're out there in the living room just chilling out, hanging out.
They're being so good.
Yeah, they're being super great. Yeah, they're super awesome kids, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, we got to get them going. I got to go pick up a computer part in Chico, so I'm going to go do that. And David's going to chill out and
he's gonna
listen to some Rise Against
kids, right?
while he babysits his kids.
Babysitting?
Babysits the kids, so.
Hey, we cut out one of my favorite sayings, and we talk about it in church a lot, is be that light in the dark for somebody. What is it? What's my one shirt that I have? It says, be the light, Matthew, something.
Yeah.
I'm doing great, right? With my
Something,
scripture.
Something, Matthew.
I think it's a Matthew.
Be the light of the world.
Be the light of the world.
Like that.
And yeah, so that's one of my favorite scriptures. So I want to just leave on that. So.
All right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for listening, and Snarp Fangle on.
Bye-bye now.